At Toshiba, we do everything in our power to eliminate emissions by creating eco-conscious products. But naturally, some emissions just can't be avoided. So we created the Carbon Zero scheme to offset the entire life cycle of our products and to make sure we all do our bit to take care of the planet. So how does it work? When you buy a Toshiba product, you can choose to protect the environment. We all know that trees are critical to the absorption of CO2 in the environment, but they also support a rich biodiversity of plants and wildlife. These projects and our carbon-aware manufacturing principles have contributed to a major milestone. Toshiba products don't cost the Earth. Join us on the journey to a sustainable planet.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Upton and welcome to today's webinar to introduce the new Carbon Zero carbon offsetting program. Let's dive right in. It's undeniable that human activities have taken a bit of a toll on our planet at the moment, and I guess it's high time we take action to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So this is where carbon offsetting steps in. Carbon offsetting is a powerful tool to help us cut down on the CO2 we release into the atmosphere by supporting a number of environmentally friendly projects. So at Toshiba, we've always been deeply committed to preserving the environment, and that's why this time we've joined forces with the experts at Greenfleet to help create a way for customers to offset the carbon footprint of the multifunction devices they purchase. Let's explore a bit of the backstory. Toshiba has been championing the Carbon Zero scheme globally since about 2009. This initiative involves calculating and offsetting the carbon dioxide emissions generated during the manufacturing, the distribution, and the operation of multifunction devices. So fast forward to 2019 and the Toshiba Carbon Zero scheme hit a significant milestone, offsetting a massive 600,000 tonnes of CO2. Our colleagues at Toshiba in Germany came close to a milestone of 100,000 tonnes of CO2, while Toshiba France imaging systems looked set to reach 250,000 tonnes of CO2 by the end of 2020. So to put those numbers into everyday terms, that 600,000 odd tonnes of CO2 is equivalent to 170,000 return flights from Dusseldorf to Tokyo, or driving around the Earth's circumference 82,000 times, or the annual emissions of 141,000 homes, or lighting up 14 million energy-saving light bulbs a year. It's also like having 350 million cubic metres of CO2, which could power 15 million cups of coffee, so they say. In 2016, the United Nations launched the Sustainable Development Goals, also called SDGs. So these are a set of 17 measurable objectives aimed at tackling global issues from poverty to gender equality. So through Toshiba's Carbon Zero scheme, Toshiba is proudly supporting 14 out of these 17 goals. So we've been involved in some remarkable projects in Africa and Brazilian rainforests and reforestation around the world. But here in Australia, we've decided to concentrate our efforts on local reforestation projects. So that's where our partnership with the local not-for-profit organisation Greenfleet comes into play. Greenfleet is doing incredible work by planting native biodiverse forests in Australia and soon to be in New Zealand. These forests not only help to restore critical ecosystems, but also capture carbon emissions on our behalf. So here's a brief introductory video showing you all the good work that Greenfleet has been doing, and then we'll hand over to Scott Sheridan, who is the Partnerships Coordinator at Greenfleet, to talk you through the Greenfleet program in further detail.
Hi everyone, very excited about this partnership between Greenfleet and Toshiba. I'm Scott, account manager at Greenfleet. I'm just going to give a brief rundown about our organisation, what we do, just to give you a bit of context for when you are talking to your clients. Greenfleet is a leading not-for-profit environmental organisation protecting our climate by restoring our forests. We've delivered climate action for over 25 years by planting native biodiverse forests in Australia and New Zealand that remove carbon emissions from the atmosphere on behalf of our supporters. Greenfleet is supported by hundreds of organisations and thousands of individuals that want to reduce their carbon footprints and take climate action. So since 1997, Greenfleet has planted more than 10.5 million native trees across 550 biodiverse forests in Australia and New Zealand. Greenfleet is also registered as a charity in Australia and has deductible gift recipient status. Greenfleet's work centres on three pillars: removing carbon, restoring nature, and advancing reconciliation in Australia. For us, our partnerships with local communities and First Nations peoples support broad benefits for the country and communities in which we live and work. The great thing about what we do and our point of difference is that we protect our trees for up to 100 years. All our projects are in Australia and New Zealand, and unlike many overseas projects, you can actually go and see for yourself the forests we are growing and walk through what we have created. So what is carbon offsetting? So this could be a little bit tricky to get your head around, so I'll provide a brief rundown to hopefully explain it a little better. So carbon offsetting is the process of activating a carbon reducing activity to compensate for a carbon emitting activity. So if you take the example of your vehicle emitting a certain amount of carbon each year, a carbon offset would counteract those emissions by either removing the same amount of carbon from the atmosphere or reducing emissions elsewhere. So there are two primary ways that these initiatives work to compensate for carbon being emitted: by mitigating or reducing carbon that is being produced and measuring the avoided carbon, or by sequestering or drawing down the existing carbon already released into the atmosphere and measuring the captured carbon. So while both methods can play a role in managing carbon emissions, the truth is not all climate action has the same positive effect on our environment. Climate actions that mitigate generally focus on the amount of carbon that has been avoided by introducing a more sustainable option. So this could include initiatives such as building solar or wind farms as renewable power sources, or providing more fuel-efficient cooking equipment to families in developing countries. So actions that sequester carbon are removing carbon that has already been emitted into the atmosphere and actively work to reduce the impacts of climate change. So by planting 100-year protective native forests, Greenfleet is ensuring that carbon emissions already in the atmosphere are captured in a long-term sustainable way. So sequestering and drawing down, this is the Greenfleet way. Now, offsets versus credits. Carbon credits come from already completed projects. So the completed project is audited. A number of credits are produced as tradable assets. These could be a unit of carbon that will be removed from the atmosphere through a sequestering activity, or through mitigation, where the avoided carbon is traded as a credit. Now, Greenfleet carbon offsets, on the other hand, are used to fund future projects, which are monitored and measured to ensure the carbon commitment of the project is delivered. This is Greenfleet's approach to climate action. Supporters offset their emissions with us and fund future revegetation projects that will capture their emissions over the lifetime of the forest. This means our supporters are not only removing carbon from the atmosphere, but also funding long-term ecosystem restoration and mitigating biodiversity loss. Just quickly covering some of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that align with Toshiba's sustainability strategy. SDG 13, climate action. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. So we've planted more than 10.5 million native trees across 550 forests that will capture more than 4.4 million tonnes of carbon over their lifetime. Greenfleet's forests draw down on carbon in the atmosphere and actively fight the impacts of climate change. SDG 15, protect, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests and combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. So in addition to capturing carbon, Greenfleet forests build resilient ecosystems which help restore biodiversity and improve land quality. To ensure the work we do is sustainable, Greenfleet plants a wide variety of native plant species that are endemic to each area we work in. This ensures we are restoring biodiversity in a way that reflects the vegetation present prior to the land being cleared. These ecosystems are critical in providing habitat to many native wildlife species. One key example of Greenfleet's work in this area is providing habitat for koalas. So in projects in southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales and southern Victoria, we are planting native eucalypt species that are providing protected habitat and food sources to koala populations. Our forest at Werniet Lang Lang on Boonwurrung country in Victoria saw Strzelecki koalas return within 3 years of planting, which is really, really cool. To measure the carbon uptake of each forest we plant, we use the full carbon accounting model, or FullCAM, developed by the CSIRO and approved by the Australian Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. Greenfleet's carbon estate is verified annually by EY, and our work is independently audited by Pitcher Partners. The legal protection of the forests planted is secured by carbon on-title agreements that are authorised by each landholder. And projects with social and cultural benefits identified by traditional owners are verified by the Aboriginal Carbon Foundation. So just to finish up, we have a couple of our stories. So in 2021, Greenfleet entered into a landmark Indigenous land use agreement with the Cubby Cubby People's Aboriginal Corporation. So our revegetation work is restoring approximately 1,100 hectares in the Noosa hinterland. As well as helping deliver social and economic benefits to the Cubby Cubby people, this project is restoring vital habitat for species including koalas and greater gliders. And we also have the Strzelecki Nature Link, which is made up of 4 Greenfleet-owned properties in South Gippsland. Once restored, it will form a 3.5-kilometre stretch of contiguous koala habitat. By planting locally native tree species, the establishment of the Strzelecki Nature Link will deliver climate action by removing carbon and ensure safe passage for wildlife. So these are just 2 of our stories. If you're curious, our website goes into detail about all our existing forests across Australia and New Zealand. There are a couple of links attached to the slide here, and our frequently asked questions is a great source if you are ever in doubt. Thanks, everyone. Excited to grow this partnership with Toshiba Australia. It's a great initiative and looking forward to seeing how this develops further.
Thanks for the great presentation, Scott. We're also really excited about this program and the partnership too. So moving on, here we'll have a look at some of the marketing support tools we've created. We've created a web page, a brochure, and a video that you saw at the beginning of the webinar. These are all available on the website via the sustainability link in the company menu and other buttons and banners also on the homepage. So starting with the web page, it's fairly concise with an intro at the top, a download link for the brochure and a YouTube video include. Scrolling down, there's a paragraph about how simple the scheme is and a little about the calculation we use. Then there's some information about our partnership with Greenfleet and some of their project examples that Scott mentioned previously. There's the Greenfleet video itself and some copy about the Sustainability Development Goals, or SDGs. There's a link to an FAQ, or Frequently Asked Questions page, which runs you through some of the typical questions that may arise for the customer who is deciding if they want to go ahead with the program. For instance, there's one, how can I see if my Toshiba MFP has been offset? All Toshiba print devices that have been carbon offset are supplied with a sticker with the Carbon Zero logo on installation. Actually, we might post this out post-installation. It also says check with your Toshiba representative if you would like to opt into the program. Well, here's another one, why is it important to offset carbon? We'll go through these questions and answers in detail at the end of the webinar. There's a 4-page brochure which runs through fairly similar content, and it's easily downloaded or printed for you to show your customers or for them to print out and forward on to their colleagues for reference. Each Toshiba print device has a corresponding Type 3 Environmental Declaration, or EPD. These datasheets are extremely thorough and created by an independent third-party verifier called EcoLeaf in Japan. Data is collected at every step of the product lifecycle, from raw material acquisition, production, distribution, and use and maintenance, as well as end of life. Let's take a look at the EPD for the recent eStudio 4525AC. This particular datasheet is quite concise compared to the others, but the dataset analysed is quite extensive. The key figure we capture here for the offset calculation is the global warming IPCC 2013 GWP 1000A, which indicates the equivalent of 1100 kilograms of CO2. Converting that to tonnes gives us 1.1 tonnes, which multiplied by Greenfleet's $18 per tonne gives us a figure of $19.80. To this we add 10% to help cover admin costs, and then round up to get $22 even. In all cases, the estimated print volume easily exceeds the likely usage, meaning that the amount of CO2 is well covered. In the case of some of the smaller printers, a different third party has performed the calculations and used a much greater volume estimate. For matters of compliance and transparency, we've chosen to use the figures indicated on all the EPDs. So what are the next steps? To make this clear, for new purchases, customers can choose to offset their device for a one-off amount ranging from $12 up to $112. This covers the device for its 5-year lifetime for the manufacturer, transport and logistics to the warehouse, the usage including consumables and energy usage, and the end of life, disposal and recycling. The assumed print volume varies accordingly per device, and detailed information is contained in the corresponding EPD datasheet. The only thing not included is the paper usage itself. For that, we still use the Print Relief program, which we plan to do a follow-up webinar as a refresher soon. And what's next? Simply create a sales order and add as you would any accessory. For instance, the item code for the eStudio 4525AC is CZ ES4525AC, and the description given is carbon zero offset for ES4525AC. Judy will send the relevant information soon. So please go ahead and start the conversation with your customers. It's looking more and more like every company has a sustainability policy and commitment or pledge to reduce their carbon footprint, and the Carbon Zero scheme can dovetail right into that for them. We'll now go through some of the questions that may arise from the Toshiba Carbon Zero scheme. We have a lot of valuable information to share with you about carbon offsetting and Toshiba's commitment to environmental sustainability. Let's start with the basics. Why take part in the carbon offsetting program? We all know that Toshiba has a rich history of innovation, and environmental awareness is a core part of our product design and manufacturing process. Toshiba does its best to minimise environmental impact, but some carbon emissions are unavoidable. That's why the Carbon Zero scheme comes in. It aims to minimise the lasting impact of products and restore the environment to its natural state. So how do we calculate the offset of a Toshiba product? It begins with a life cycle analysis, assessing all the materials used in manufacturing. During the design, production and distribution, a greenhouse gas assessment helps determine the carbon footprint of each product. And we also factor in the carbon implications of consumables like toner and energy requirements throughout the product's life cycle. So why is carbon offsetting important? Well, it's a critical part of an effective environmental plan. It's not just about reducing emissions, it's about using resources efficiently, keeping costs down and helping fight global warming. So what if my customer has an existing device they would like to carbon offset? If they have an existing device that is part of the current range, then that device can be offset. Simply complete the sales order form as you would for any accessory. Their marketing will send a sticker and a covering letter to the customer to acknowledge that they are now part of the program. Can your customers choose which projects to support? Toshiba and Greenfleet have chosen specific projects for the Carbon Zero scheme. If your customer wants to explore offsetting their own business emissions or supporting different projects, they can reach out to Greenfleet directly. How can my customer obtain information about the life cycle assessment? More detailed information is available in the Environmental Product Declaration or EPD datasheet. These are available on request from marketing and will be available on the website or SharePoint Drive shortly. So as a recap, why support Greenfleet? When you support the Toshiba Carbon Zero scheme, you're helping Greenfleet restore native forests. Every time one of your customers offsets one of their devices, they're contributing to planting native trees in legally protected forests, effectively removing emissions. Thank you for being part of this webinar. We hope you understand now why carbon offsetting is so vital and how Toshiba's new Carbon Zero scheme can play a crucial role. We're excited to have you on this journey towards a greener, more sustainable future. If you have any questions, simply reach out to marketing or via your sales manager.